The ruins of the first clash still smoldered behind them, a graveyard of steel and fire that refused to be silent. Lyra pushed forward, her boots crunching on shattered glass, her breath burning her chest, but her mind raced faster than her body. She had seen the way the enemy moved, the way their machines adapted mid-battle, as if they were not merely responding, but predicting. That thought gnawed at her more than the smoke clawing her lungs. She wasn't just fighting soldiers, she was fighting something that learned, something that evolved with every strike. Ahead, the resistance fighters she had rallied looked to her with eyes that carried both hope and the weight of despair. They weren't just following her orders, they were betting their lives on her being right. And she couldn't shake the voice in her head whispering, "What if you're not?" The group entered a hollowed-out transport hub, its glass roof caved in, daylight cutting down in fractured beams. The silence was wrong, too wrong. A veteran named Karst lifted his rifle, scanning the corners. "It's too clean," he muttered, his voice low. Lyra's hand tightened on her sidearm. She remembered her father's warning. His last words before the war had torn him away from her. "They will never face you where you are strong. They will drag you into their silence, and there they will break you." That memory almost knocked her to her knees, but then a flicker of movement near the far wall snapped her back. "Eyes up!" she shouted, just as the wall itself unfolded. No, peeled open, revealing alien drones cloaked in chameleon plating. The fighters reacted instantly, but Lyra caught the strange rhythm in the machine's movements. They weren't attacking all at once. They were waiting. One drone surged forward, firing a pulse that shattered stone like paper. Lyra dropped low, rolling, firing into the joint where armor met core. The drone collapsed, but its death triggered something. A sharp pulse of light ran through the remaining swarm. They shifted, adapted, learned her strike, and that's when a chilling thought struck her harder than the gunfire tearing overhead. Every time she killed one, the survivors became stronger. Karst cursed loudly. "We can't hold this," he yelled, blasting another drone only to see two more advance with mirrored precision. Lyra's instinct screamed. She realized this wasn't a trap to kill them. It was a test. The enemy was studying them, her breaking down humanity's tactics piece by piece. Then she heard something impossible, something no one else seemed to notice. A voice, not human, yet almost familiar, weaving through the static of the drone's hum. It whispered from the machines, as though they carried it in their circuitry. "You are not ready, Lyra." Her blood went cold. None of the others reacted. They hadn't heard it, which meant it wasn't for them. It was for her. She fired again, dragging her squad toward a service tunnel. "Move! Now!" she commanded, covering their retreat as the drones shifted into an eerily synchronized formation. Not pursuing, just watching, like predators letting prey think they'd escaped. By the time the fighters reached the shadows of the tunnel, Lyra's heart was hammering, not just from the fight, but from that voice echoing in her skull. She knew what she had heard, and it terrified her more than the battle itself. The tunnel swallowed them in damp darkness, the echo of boots on broken concrete the only reminder they were still moving. Lyra's ears still rang with that impossible whisper, the way it had threaded through machine and mind as though it knew her name before she had spoken it aloud. She tried to steady her breathing, tried to shove the fear down, but the silence pressed back harder than any battlefield ever had. The squad lit their lamps, weak beams cutting through mildew-stained walls. Karst spat on the floor. "We're running blind," he growled, but his voice shook despite the bravado. Lyra wanted to tell him they weren't running. They were buying time, but she couldn't lie when her own hands were trembling. The drones hadn't pursued, and that was worse than an ambush. It meant they had gotten what they wanted. A younger fighter, Jessa, clutched her rifle too tightly, knuckles white. "Did you hear it?" she whispered, almost afraid of her own words. Lyra froze. "Hear what?" Jessa's wide eyes flicked toward her. "That voice," it said. She stopped herself, pressing her lips tight, but Lyra already knew. She wasn't the only one. That confirmation hit her like ice water. Before she could respond, a sound rolled through the tunnel, low, metallic like chains dragging across iron. The squad froze, weapons raised, scanning shadows that stretched longer than they should have. The air shifted, cooler, charged, like the tunnel itself had become a throat waiting to swallow them. And then they saw it, not drones this time, but something else entirely. A towering shape unfolded from the dark, its limbs scraping the walls, its body stitched together from stolen armor and broken human tech, as if the enemy had built a mirror of their own weapons. Its single eye glowed with a sickly green light, fixing on Lyra. She raised her weapon, but before she fired, the machine spoke, not in static, not in whispers, but in a broken, fractured human voice. "Lyra, you lead them to end." The words weren't quite right, warped like a radio picking up two frequencies at once. The squad recoiled in horror, some breaking ranks, but Lyra held her ground even as dread sank claws into her chest. "Why me?" she shouted, her voice echoing in the tunnel. The machine tilted its head, almost curious, almost mocking, then stepped forward, slow, deliberate. The walls shook with each movement, dust raining down. Karst fired first, rounds sparking harmlessly against its composite shell. The others followed, the tunnel erupting in thunder, but Lyra saw the truth. The thing wasn't here to kill them. It was here to talk. And with each step closer, its warped voice grew clearer, more human, as though something inside the machine was trying to reach out through the corruption. Jessa screamed over the gunfire. "It's not dying." And then, in the chaos, the voice cut through everything, steady and clear this time. "You know me." The gunfire cracked like endless thunder, shell casings clattering against the concrete floor, but the machine did not fall. Its armored plating peeled in places where rounds found weak seams, but each scar only seemed to wake it further, each spark revealing more of the unnatural veins of green fire that pulsed through its body. The squad was screaming, firing, cursing, falling back into a cluster around Lyra, but she stood frozen, her rifle heavy and forgotten in her hands, her entire body trembling not from fear, but from recognition. The voice, it wasn't just some broken imitation of human speech. It was too exact, too jagged in the way it stumbled, too familiar in the way it formed her name. She had heard that cadence before, long ago, in the smoke and ash of her childhood. She felt her throat tighten, her lungs seize. The flashes of the firefight lit the machine's warped frame in stuttering bursts, and in those flickers she saw not just metal but remnants of something else, something human burned into its circuitry. She remembered the glove in her hands, blackened and crumbling, the last piece of her father she had clung to in the ruins. She remembered his voice, deep and steady even as the bombs fell, even as he pushed her under the workbench and told her to stay quiet, stay small, stay alive. The words he spoke then and the words the machine spoke now were not the same, but the timbre, the rhythm. Her mind screamed it was impossible, but her heart whispered it could not be anyone else. She stumbled backward, colliding with Darren, who grabbed her arm roughly, trying to pull her behind cover. "Lyra, it's not stopping," he shouted over the roar, his face streaked with grime and sweat, eyes wild with the desperate clarity of a soldier who knows his weapon is useless. She shook her head violently, tears stinging her eyes even as she fought to form the words. "It's him," she whispered hoarsely, though the admission tasted like poison. "It's my father." Darren froze at that, his grip tightening on her arm as though to anchor her to the present. "No," he said flat, almost mechanical. "No, Lyra. He's dead. You told me he was dead." The machine's burning eye flared brighter, the grinding of its joints echoing like a slow drumbeat. And then it spoke again, the voice glitching, layering but undeniably shaped into words that struck her like a blade between the ribs. "Daughter, you left me in the fire." The world tilted. She gasped, choking on air that suddenly felt too thick to breathe, her knees nearly buckling. Images of that night slammed through her mind with brutal force. The collapse, the firestorm, her own hands clawing at rubble until Darren had pulled her away screaming, dragging her from the ruins even as she had fought to go back, fought to reach him. She had lived, and her father had not. Or so she thought. But here, now, a weapon of the enemy stood before her, speaking with his voice, calling her name. The gunfire faltered as the squad ran out of ammo, the clattering of empty magazines echoing like death bells. Karst roared and charged with a combat knife, slashing futilely at the armor, and the machine swatted him aside like a rag doll, his body smashing into the tunnel wall with a sickening crack. He didn't get back up. The others panicked, scrambling back into the dark, but Lyra could not move. Her hands rose without conscious thought, reaching toward the machine, toward the eye that glowed like molten glass. Her voice trembled, cracked, but it carried anyway. If it's really you, if you're inside there, then tell me something only my father would know. The machine froze mid-step, the grinding of its joints halting. For a heartbeat, the tunnel was silent except for the hiss of leaking pipes and the ragged breathing of those who remained. Then, softly, brokenly, the voice came again. Stars on ceiling. Her breath caught like a knife in her throat. When she had been a child, too young to sleep through the raids, her father had painted stars on the ceiling of their workshop, little dots of luminous paint that glowed in the dark when the power failed. He had told her that no matter how black the night became, she could always find light if she looked up. She had never told anyone else that, not even Darren. Her knees gave way, the rifle clattering to the floor, her tears spilling freely now as the weight of the impossible crashed down on her. The squad stared, some in horror, some in confusion, but Darren's face was twisted in rage, denial, and something darker. He seized her shoulder, shaking her hard. Don't listen to it. It's a trick, Lyra. They're inside your head, using your memories. You think they don't know how to pull strings. His words cut, but the machine's eye dimmed, flickered, as though in pain, as though something inside it was struggling against the shell. Not trick, it rasped. Not enemy. Still me. And then, with a shuddering motion, it slammed its massive hand into its own chest, clawing at the plating. Sparks flew, shards of alloy scattering across the floor, and for the briefest instant Lyra saw beneath the armor. Not circuits, not wires. Something more organic, something fused, something that should not exist. A glimpse of bone, a glimpse of flesh bound in metal. The squad recoiled, shouting curses, some raising weapons again in horror. But Lyra staggered forward, her hand trembling in the air as if reaching through a nightmare. "Father," she whispered, her voice raw, desperate. The machine froze, its massive hand twitching, its eye dimming like a dying star. Then its voice fractured into static, a dozen layers at once, human and inhuman, grief and fury entwined. Run before. I cannot stop them. The tunnel shook violently, a rumble from deeper within the earth, and suddenly the walls lit with green lines like veins, alien circuitry pulsing to life all around them. The machine lurched forward, but not at them, toward the source of the glow, slamming its body against the wall as though to hold something back, as though to barricade the way. Dust rained from the ceiling, chunks of concrete collapsing. Darren yanked Lyra backward, dragging her despite her sob protests, shouting at the squad to move. The others didn't hesitate. They fled, stumbling, tripping, but running, their lamps swinging wildly in the chaos. Lyra twisted in Darren's grip, screaming over the roar of collapsing stone, her voice cracking with anguish. "No, we can't leave him. He's in there. He's still." But the rest of her words were drowned by a deafening detonation as the wall burst apart in a surge of green fire. From a wound in the earth poured figures, sleek, insectal soldiers with burning eyes and blades for arms, their shrieks piercing like drills. The machine roared, its voice splitting between human agony and mechanical rage, throwing itself at the swarm, tearing, crushing, holding the line even as pieces of its body were ripped away. Darren dragged Lyra, his voice harsh, merciless. "He's gone. He's already gone." But she fought, clawed at his arms, her heart tearing in two as she watched the impossible sight of her father who had died in fire, now dying again, swallowed by the enemy, sacrificing what little was left of himself to buy her one more chance. Her screams echoed down the tunnel, chasing them into the dark, even as the glow of the battle faded behind collapsing walls. When at last the rumble died, when silence pressed in again, she collapsed to her knees, shaking uncontrollably. The others were pale, hollow-eyed, no one daring to speak. Darren knelt beside her, his jaw clenched, his hands tight fists. "Whatever that thing was," he said, his voice low and rough, "it wasn't your father anymore. Do you understand me? You saw what it was." "You can't." But Lyra cut him off with a ragged whisper, her eyes blazing with tears. "No, it was him. It was him, and they took him. They made him into that." The silence after those words was heavier than the earth above them. The squad shifted uneasily, none willing to meet her gaze, but all of them knew the truth that clawed at the edges of their thoughts. If the enemy could take one man and make him into that, how many others have been remade? And how many voices waited to be recognized? The tunnel stretched endlessly, a labyrinth of damp concrete and alien scars where green veins of light cut across the walls like wounds in the earth. The squad moved in silence now, weapons trembling in their hands, every footstep echoing too loudly in the oppressive quiet. Lyra stumbled at the rear, her eyes hollow, her body moving on instinct more than will. Darren stayed close, his face carved from stone, but even he could not mask the way his shoulders hunched as though bearing an invisible weight. The others whispered when they thought she couldn't hear, words like infection, corruption, risk. She knew what they meant. They feared her. They feared what she had touched, what she had seen, what she could not let go. Her mind would not release the image, the plating torn back, the glimpse of bone, the fractured voice whispering stars on ceiling. She had spent years burying grief under anger, under the rebellion's cause, but now the grief was alive again, raw and bleeding, clawing at her ribs with every breath. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the crystal's faint throb beneath her skin, as though it pulsed in rhythm with her pain. Was it drawing power from her memories? Or was it amplifying them, twisting them until she couldn't tell where her own heart ended and the alien shard began? They reached a chamber where the ceiling had collapsed, jagged rock and rebar blocking the way forward. Karth's body flashed in her mind, broken against the tunnel wall, his sacrifice already swallowed by the machine that might have been her father. She forced her eyes shut, swallowing back bile. She would not forget, no matter how much the others wished she could. Darren barked orders, his voice sharp to cover the tremor beneath it, sending 2 men ahead to scout an alternate path. Lyra leaned against the cold wall, her breath ragged, when she felt it. A whisper, not sound, a vibration through the shard in her chest, brushing against her thoughts like icy fingers. She stiffened, pressing harder against the wall, her eyes darting. No one else reacted. The whispers were for her alone. Fragments of a voice, broken and stuttering, but familiar enough to turn her blood to ice. Lyra, still here, still fighting, her knees nearly gave. She clutched at her chest, trembling, as if she could claw the crystal free, silence it before the others noticed. But it didn't stop. The voice buried deep within the shard was his, her father's. She pressed her forehead to the wall, closing her eyes, her teeth gritted against a sob. Was it real? Was he truly alive inside the machine, reaching out to her through this cursed shard? Or was it the enemy, weaving his voice through the crystal to shatter her resolve? The uncertainty gnawed at her, driving cracks into her sanity. Darren's hand closed on her shoulder suddenly, steady but forceful, spinning her toward him. His eyes locked on hers, sharp, searching. "You're hearing something, aren't you?" he demanded, his voice low so the others wouldn't hear. She shook her head, too fast, too unconvincing. His grip tightened. "Don't lie to me. I saw your face back there. I see it now." Her throat closed, but she forced words out in a hoarse whisper. "He's still alive." Darren's expression darkened instantly, a storm gathering behind his eyes. He pulled her closer, his face inches from hers, his voice a harsh hiss. "No, don't you dare say that. Don't you dare let them use his voice to tear you apart. That thing was not your father, Lyra. It was a weapon wearing his bones. Do you understand?" If you let it inside your head, you'll be next. Her tears blurred her vision, her body trembling in his grip. She wanted to scream at him, to shove him away, but she couldn't. Because deep down, part of her feared he was right. Yet the voice, those words, stars on ceiling, no one else could have known. You don't know, she whispered back, her voice breaking. You didn't see what I saw. Darren's jaw tightened, his breath harsh. He released her suddenly, as if her touch burned, and turned away, barking at the scouts who had returned with word of side passage. But as he moved, she saw the crack in his armor, the flicker of fear in his eyes. Not fear of the enemy, fear of losing her. The squad pushed into the narrow passage, single file, the air thick with mold and old dust. Lyra followed, her hands shaking, her mind split between grief, fury, and a dangerous hope she couldn't extinguish. The whispers followed her, sometimes faint, sometimes sharp enough to make her stumble, fragments of her father's voice tangled with static. She pressed her hand harder against her chest until her nails dug into flesh, but the shard's light only glowed faintly brighter, feeding on her turmoil. They emerged into a vast cavern, its ceiling lost in shadow, its floor a broken lattice of metal platforms spanning a dark abyss. Green light pulsed below, casting sickly glows upward like breath from a buried giant. Alien constructs lined the edges, towers of black alloy humming with power, their surfaces crawling with shifting symbols. The squad hesitated at the sight, fear tightening their formation. Darren raised a fist, signaling silence, his eyes scanning the alien machinery. But Lyra's gaze locked onto one tower in particular, its glow stronger than the rest. The shard in her chest pulsed violently in response, and with it came a surge of whispering voices, louder, clearer. Her father's among them. Lyra, find me, trapped inside. Her breath caught, her whole body shuddering. It wasn't just an echo. It was direction. He was here. She stepped forward before she could stop herself, her boots ringing against the metal platform. The squad spun toward her, hissing for silence, but she barely heard them. The glow from the tower reached for her, and she reached back like a moth drawn to flame. Suddenly, the abyss below erupted. Tendrils of black alloy shot upward like spears, smashing through platforms, tearing metal apart. Soldiers screamed as the walkways split beneath them, bodies plunging into the glowing dark. Alien figures emerged with the tendrils, sleek and lethal, their blades flashing in the green light. Chaos exploded in an instant, the squad firing wildly, the cavern becoming a killing ground. Lyra staggered, her ears ringing, the shard in her chest searing with heat. The voices screamed louder now, overlapping, fractured, but all she could hear was his. Her father's voice, calling her name. Here, Lyra, here. It was coming from within the tower. Without thinking, she broke into a run, weaving through falling debris and alien blades, the world narrowing until only that tower existed. Only that voice mattered. Darren saw her and roared her name, his voice desperate, furious, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. She reached the base of the tower, her hands slamming against the alloy surface that thrummed with unnatural life. Her eyes widened as she saw it. Within the black metal, faintly visible like a prisoner behind glass, a human form bound in tendrils, its face pale, its eyes closed, but unmistakable. Her father. The breath tore from her lungs. She pressed her palms to the surface, tears spilling, her voice breaking into a sobbing scream. I found you. The form's eyes fluttered open, glowing faintly, and for a split second, recognition flashed there. His lips moved, the faintest of whispers escaping through the wall. Lyra! And then the tower convulsed, its surface warping, twisting, as the alien machinery responded to her presence. The tendrils lashed outward, wrapping around her arms, pulling her against the surface, fusing her to it. She screamed, thrashing, but the shard in her chest pulsed with violent light, linking her to the tower in a surge of energy that lit the entire cavern. Her father's form spasmed inside, his scream joining hers in a perfect, horrifying harmony. The squad watched in terror. Darren charged, cutting through enemy lines with reckless fury, shouting her name until his voice broke. But before he could reach her, the tower erupted with blinding light, swallowing Lyra whole. The light devoured her. It wasn't brightness as humans understood it. It was raw information, searing code, threads of thought and memory unraveling and restitching in ways her mind couldn't grasp. Her scream was stolen, absorbed into the tower, and then she wasn't standing anymore. She was everywhere at once. The abyss opened inside her. A lattice of alien logic stretched over her own memories, her own emotions, her very identity. Her chest burned where the shard fused deeper, the crystalline veins branching outward beneath her skin like roots clawing into earth. Her vision fractured into 1,000 perspectives. She saw the cavern from above, saw the squad fighting below, saw Darren's face twisted in desperation, his eyes fixed only on her. She saw her father's body entangled within the tower, his soul screaming through the same channels that bound her. And she saw something else. Behind the alien machinery, behind the prison, something vast and awake turned its gaze toward her. It was not a single being, but a network, a hive, an ocean of consciousness that pressed against her mind like a storm tide. And it whispered in voices too many to count. One of us. One of us. She fought. God, she fought. She clung to the memory of her father's workshop, the painted stars on the ceiling, the warmth of his hands guiding hers across gears and wires. She clung to the feel of Darren's grip, harsh but real, grounding her when the world tilted. But the hive didn't care. It pressed harder, pouring images in her mind. Cities falling in green fire, soldiers remade into machines, human screams dissolving in a static. She saw herself among them, her face expressionless, her body armored, her voice no longer her own. She felt her hands rise in that vision, slaughtering the people she swore to protect. The shard in her chest pulsed with that rhythm, urging her closer to the edge. Then a voice cut through the storm. Strong, familiar, breaking. Lyra, fight it, don't let them take you. Her father. His voice wasn't just memory, it was here inside the tower, fighting the same chains that bound her. She turned toward him in the endless lattice, and for the first time she saw not just his body trapped in tendrils, but his essence, splintered, scarred, but defiantly human. He reached for her, not with hands, but with the tether of blood and memory. She lunged for him, her mind clawing across the alien network, forcing pathways to bend. Pain ripped through her, white-hot, shredding her nerves, but she didn't let go. I won't leave you again, she screamed into the void, her voice echoing across circuits and synapses alike. Their hands met in the lattice, sparks flying where human defiance collided with alien control. The hive shrieked in fury, tendrils of thought lashing at them both, but together they pushed back. In the cavern, the tower convulsed violently, arcs of green lightning ripping across its surface. Soldiers stumbled, some incinerated by the surges. The squad cowered, shouting over the chaos, but Darren never stopped running. He reached the base of the tower, his knife sparking uselessly against the alien surface as he hacked at the tendrils binding Lyra. Come back to me, he roared, his voice breaking with desperation. Lyra, don't let them have you. Inside the lattice, his voice cut through like fire and fog. She felt it, the tether not of blood but of choice, of loyalty forged in battle and nights of whispered truths. She was torn between them, father and comrade, past and present, but she knew she needed both if she was to survive. She pulled harder, dragging her father's essence closer, forcing the shard in her chest to blaze brighter than the hive's glow. The hive screamed in rage, and then it changed tactics. The voices softened, twisted, took forms she could not ignore. Her father's voice, but warped, accusing. You left me in the fire. Darren's voice, cruel, sneering. You'll always be too weak to lead. The painted stars on the ceiling blackened and fell, each one whispering betrayal. Her resolve cracked. Her grip faltered and for a terrifying moment, the hive poured into her like water into a sinking ship. She felt herself slipping, her own thoughts smothered under theirs. Her father's hand tightened on hers, pulling her back. His real voice, ragged but fierce, tore through the lies. "You're stronger than me, stronger than all of us. Don't give him control." And with those words, she realized the truth. It wasn't about saving him anymore. It was about carrying him, carrying all of them, forward. The shard in her chest flared with such intensity the alien lattice cracked, threads snapping, pathways collapsing. The cavern erupted. The tower split with a sound like the world tearing, green light blasting outward in a storm that annihilated the nearest alien soldiers. Darren was thrown back, slamming against the platform, but he scrambled up again, shielding his eyes as the tower burst apart. From within the explosion, Lyra emerged, suspended in the air, tendrils of light unraveling around her. The shard had fused deeper, lines of silver fire running through her veins, her eyes glowing faintly. She landed hard, her knees hitting the metal, but when she raised her head, she was not the same. The squad stared in silence, their weapons forgotten. Even Darren froze, his mouth open, as if the woman before him was both Lyra and something far more. She gasped for breath, her body trembling, but she forced the words out, her voice rough and resonant with the shard's echo. "He's still alive. They've chained him, and I won't let them keep him." Behind her, the remains of the tower writhed, not dead but wounded, green fire bleeding like a severed artery. The hive would not forgive this. She could feel it already, its gaze sharpening, its wrath focusing. Time was running out. The tower screamed, not with sound, but with vibration that crawled through bone and blood, a living thrum that shook the marrow of every human rebel within its steel bones. Lyra staggered as the pressure roared outward from the spire's heart. Her hand splayed against the metal floor that pulsed like a living thing. The walls themselves shifted, their alien script glowing red, bleeding light that looked like fire painted in liquid motion. For a heartbeat, she thought she might be swallowed alive by the tower, consumed by its ancient machine flesh, and rewritten into nothing but signal and dust. Then the hive struck. The alien soldiers surged through every corridor at once. Endless black carapaces with molten veins burning brighter than ever, their weapons fused to their arms like natural extensions. They did not advance. They flooded, an unstoppable tide. Darren's voice barked across the comms, clipped and hoarse. "Fall back to the choke. Don't let them." His command dissolved into static as a plasma burst tore through the hall. Rebels screamed, steel screamed louder, and the whole tower seemed to fold under the onslaught. Lyra staggered forward, the shard in her chest burning hotter than ever, her veins etched with silver fire. She tried to breathe, but the tower seemed to breathe for her. Every inhale rattled like machinery. Every exhale spilled sparks from her fingertips. She felt the hive's attack not just with her eyes, but with her bones. Each shot, each scream, each dying breath echoed through her nerves as if the tower was translating pain into language. A soldier lunged, 6 limbs, a blade arm that cut the air like lightning. Lyra raised her hand, and the world convulsed. A wave of silver light burst from her palm, not clean, not sharp, but jagged, unstable. It carved the soldier into ribbons midair, his molten veins flickering like dying candles before collapsing into ash. Her breath caught, half horror, half awe. Behind her, Darren skidded to a halt, chest heaving, gauntlet cracked and smoldering. "You did that," he said, disbelief dripping from his voice. "No," Lyra gasped, clutching her chest as the shard throbbed like a second heart. "It did." The tower shifted again, as if answering. The walls peeled open, revealing hidden conduits of molten light that poured into her veins. She felt herself being rewritten, code bleeding into her blood, alien circuits weaving into her nerves. She screamed, but her scream turned into a resonance that shattered the helmets of the nearest alien soldiers, their skulls collapsing from inside as their molten veins went dark. The rebels stared. One of them, face burned, rifle shaking, whispered, she's controlling it. But Lyra knew the truth. It was controlling her, and she was just clinging to the surface, holding on by will alone. The hive adjusted. The soldiers no longer charged blindly. They moved in perfect synchrony, their black armor refracting the silver glow spilling off her skin. Their overlord had learned, and now the swarm closed in with surgical precision. Darren grabbed Lyra's arm, pulling her back just as the next wave poured through a shattered bulkhead. "We can't hold this." The shard disagreed. Her body arched as another pulse ripped through her chest, and suddenly the tower opened around them like a blooming flower of fire and steel. Platforms extended, conduits rose like spires, and the hive was thrown into disarray as the terrain itself shifted under her will, or under the shard's command. She couldn't tell anymore. She raised both arms, and the conduits answered, firing spears of molten silver through alien ranks, tearing them apart in showers of glowing ash. For the first time, the hive faltered, but the cost was clear. Every pulse from the shard hollowed her out. Every surge of power burned not just the enemy, but her. She could feel her humanity slipping, piece by piece, into the machinery of the tower. Her heart no longer beat in rhythm with itself. It thudded in sync with the alien core. She could feel thoughts that weren't hers pressing at the edges of her mind. Cold, logical, endless. Darren saw it. He stepped in front of her, gripping her face hard enough to ground her. "Lyra, don't let it take you. You're still in control." Her eyes snapped open, glowing silver. Her voice wasn't entirely hers. "No one controls this." The words weren't a warning. They were prophecy, because the hive had only just begun. The walls of the tower split apart, and through them came something vast, a creature 3 times the size of any soldier, its armor fused with machinery, its molten veins pulsing in time with hers. Its face was a blank mask of obsidian, but its gaze locked onto her with the certainty of recognition. She staggered as her chest burned hotter, her shard resonating with its core like twin hearts beating the same rhythm. Darren whispered, "What the hell is that?" Lyra already knew. It was the shard's sibling. The chamber became a crucible, human rebels crushed between the swarm and this towering new horror, the hive screaming in perfect unity, the tower answering in fire and light, and Lyra standing at the eye of it all. Half human, half something else, and running out of time before the choice was made for her. And the shard's voice finally whispered in her blood, "Merge or die." The chamber convulsed, as if the tower itself feared what had just entered. The creature's molten veins pulsed in perfect harmony with the shard in Lyra's chest, each throb sending spikes of agony and clarity through her body. It wasn't just an enemy. It was a reflection, a living echo of the same alien technology now trying to consume her. Its every step shook the platform, metal bending beneath its colossal weight. The rebels broke. Some fired desperately, their rifles sparking harmlessly off the beast's armor. Others screamed, retreating into corridors that twisted and closed behind them as the tower shifted under Lyra's influence. Darren stood his ground, his gauntlet arm raised, even as it smoked and trembled under the strain of its failing shield. "Lyra, tell me you've got something." Her breath came ragged, her skin glowing in cracks of silver light that flickered like lightning beneath her flesh. The shard's voice had become louder, no longer a whisper, but a demand that pressed behind her skull like a blade. "Merge. Become whole. Only then will you survive." She shook her head, teeth grinding. "No. If I merge, I'm not me anymore." The giant creature cocked its head, its faceless mask reflecting her glow. Then impossibly it spoke, not in sound but in her mind. The voice was alien, layered, yet disturbingly familiar. "You are incomplete. I'm the other half. Without me, you burn out. With me, you ascend." Darren cursed under his breath, realizing what she was hearing. "It's talking to you, isn't it? Don't you dare listen." But the creature didn't wait. It charged, a mountain of steel and fire, blade arms cutting arcs of molten energy. Darren dove forward, slamming his failing gauntlet against its chest in a desperate attempt to slow it. The impact lit up the room, a shockwave blasting debris across the chamber. He was thrown back, blood spraying from his lips as his body crashed against the wall. "Darren!" Lyra screamed, but her voice wasn't only hers. It was threaded with the tower's resonance, rattling the walls, breaking the alien soldier's formation with its raw force. She staggered toward him, her veins glowing brighter with every step, the shard burning like a star in her chest. The creature rose from the smoke, unscathed. Its molten veins burned hotter, its aura suffocating, and Lyra realized the horrifying truth. It was feeding off her. The stronger her shard burned, the stronger it became. She tried to cut it down. She raised her arms, conduits firing spears of silver energy, but the beast caught them, absorbing them into its chest as if she were fueling it. Her power was its lifeblood. The shard's voice screamed now, undeniable. "Merge! Complete the circuit or die as prey." Lyra dropped to her knees, hands pressed to her chest, torn between two fires. Her humanity was slipping, her body hollowed by alien light. Around her, rebels screamed and died, crushed by the swarm. Darren struggled to rise, coughing blood, his eyes locked on hers. "Lyra, don't let them take you. You're more than this thing." Her mind split in two. One half clung to his voice, his face, the fire of everything human she'd fought for. The other half drowned in the shard's pulse, drawn toward the creature that was her mirror, her other half, her doom or her salvation. The beast stopped its advance. It stretched out one massive, clawed hand, not an attack but invitation, and Lyra felt herself rising to meet it. Her fingers shook, her veins bursting with silver fire, her heart a war between love and oblivion. She could hear both voices, Darren's desperate plea and the shard's relentless command, colliding in her skull until she thought she would break apart. Then the choice made itself. Her body lurched forward, her palm outstretched, light bleeding from her skin as her hand met the creature's. The instant they touched, the chamber detonated in brilliance. Silver fire roared upward, consuming the tower, the rebels, the swarm, everything, until the battlefield was nothing but blinding radiance. And in the center of it, Lyra's scream twisted into silence as her form dissolved into light. When the glare cleared, Darren crawled forward through smoke and ruin. The chamber was gone, the hive scattered into ash. And, standing in the middle of the wreckage, was no longer Lyra. Not fully. Her eyes burned like twin stars, her veins etched in permanent silver, her voice echoing with alien resonance. "I am not her," she said, but part of her face still trembled with recognition. And the creature, her other half, was gone. Only its molten veins lingered, burned into her own flesh. Darren's voice broke as he whispered, "Lyra, what have you done?" Her glowing gaze fixed on him, unreadable, alien and human at once. And for the first time since this war began, she didn't know whose side she was truly on. The tower pulsed once more, a heartbeat that wasn't hers alone. And outside, in the vast darkness of space, thousands of hive warships stirred as if awakened by her scream.